Most dog owners would do almost anything to ensure their pet is happy and healthy. The love people feel for their dogs is genuine, and the effort they put into providing good food, regular walks, and comfortable living conditions reflects real care. Yet some of the most common habits that dog owners practice every day, including habits that come directly from that love, can quietly erode a dog's psychological well-being in ways that are easy to miss. Unlike a physical injury, mental health damage in dogs rarely announces itself clearly. It shows up as subtle behavioral shifts, increased pacing, sudden destructive tendencies, unusual clinginess, or what dog behaviorists call whale eye, where a dog shows the whites of their eyes as a sign of anxiety. These signals are frequently misread as naughtiness or stubbornness when they are actually expressions of chronic stress. Understanding which everyday habits cause this kind of harm and why gives dog owners the specific knowledge needed to make small but meaningful adjustments that can change a dog's emotional life significantly. Rushing sniff breaks during walks. For humans, a walk is about exercise or getting somewhere. For dogs, it is something fundamentally different. Dogs possess up to 300 million scent receptors, compared to roughly 6 million in humans, and they devote approximately 40 times more brain volume to processing smell. When a dog stops to investigate a patch of grass or a fire hydrant, they are not being slow or distracted. They are reading the environment in the primary way their brain is built to process information. Constantly pulling a dog away from these sniffing moments is the sensory equivalent of blindfolding a person and leading them through a space they could otherwise fully perceive. Research supports the practical value of what are sometimes called sniff walks or snifferis. Approximately 20 minutes of uninterrupted sniffing provides the cognitive stimulation equivalent of an hour of physical walking. This activity lowers a dog's heart rate, releases dopamine, and helps them feel grounded and calm. Denying dogs adequate sniff time on a regular basis removes one of the most natural and effective forms of mental enrichment available to them. Inconsistent rules and boundaries. Dogs are exceptionally skilled at pattern recognition, but they struggle with ambiguity. When household rules shift based on mood or circumstance, allowing a dog on the couch on a relaxed Sunday, but scolding the same behavior on a Monday morning, the dog does not learn that context determines the rule. They experience a world that feels unpredictable and therefore unsafe. Chronic inconsistency is one of the leading triggers for anxiety in dogs. Animals that cannot predict the consequences of their actions exist in a state of low-level uncertainty that is psychologically taxing over time. Dogs thrive when they understand clearly and consistently what is expected of them across all situations and from every member of the household. Without that clarity, they often respond by becoming clingy, seeking constant reassurance, or testing boundaries repeatedly as a way of trying to map the rules of their environment. Forcing social interaction. The instinct to socialize a shy or fearful dog by placing them in the situations they fear is common and well-intentioned. The reasoning seems logical. Exposure to the feared thing should reduce the fear. But forcing a dog past its emotional threshold through direct, uncontrolled exposure to frightening stimuli is a technique called flooding, and the psychological research on this approach is consistent. It can cause trauma and a state called learned helplessness, where the animal stops trying to escape or cope and simply shuts down. When a dog is showing stress signals including lip licking, tail tucking, stiff posture, or growling, they are communicating that they need space. Overriding those signals and forcing the interaction breaks the dog's trust in their owner as a protector, which is one of the most foundational elements of the human-dog relationship. A dog that learns their distress signals will be ignored may escalate to more extreme defensive behaviors, including biting, having concluded that proactive self-protection is the only reliable option available to them. Punishment-based training. Training methods that rely on yelling, physical correction, or aversive tools, including shock collars and prong collars, may suppress unwanted behaviors in the short term, but they do so by creating fear rather than understanding. The dog stops the behavior not because it has learned what to do instead, but because it has learned that the behavior produces pain or fear. the underlying emotional state that prompted the behavior in the first place remains entirely unaddressed. Studies comparing dogs trained with aversive methods to those trained with positive reinforcement consistently find that aversive training is associated with higher cortisol levels, indicating chronic stress, and with more pessimistic behavioral tendencies. Over time, punishment-based training erodes the bond of trust between dog and owner and can produce a dog that becomes reluctant to offer new behaviors at all for fear of making a mistake. The result is often a more anxious, less confident animal than the one the training was intended to improve. Ignoring subtle body language, by the time a dog growls or snaps, it has typically communicated its discomfort many times in quieter ways that went unnoticed or unacknowledged. A stiff wag, yawning when not tired, excessive grooming, freezing in place, or showing the whites of the eyes are all recognized stress signals in canine body language. These are the whispers that precede the shout. When owners consistently fail to respond to these earlier signals, dogs learn that quieter communication is ineffective and escalate to more forceful signals to be heard. This escalation process also leaves dogs in a state of hypervigilance, perpetually monitoring their environment and their owners for signs of what might come next. The cognitive and emotional cost of sustained hypervigilance is significant, contributing to chronic stress that affects behavior, physical health, and overall quality of life. Excessive isolation without stimulation. Dogs are social pack animals whose evolutionary history involves near constant companionship and activity. Leaving a dog alone for 8 to 10 hours in a crate or empty room without meaningful interaction, mental stimulation, or physical engagement creates conditions that can produce severe separation anxiety, depression, and repetitive compulsive behaviors, including obsessive tail chasing or persistent pacing. Mental stagnation is as damaging as physical isolation. A dog left without anything to engage its mind will find its own ways to create stimulation, which frequently manifests as destructive chewing, excessive barking, or other behaviors that owners find problematic, and that actually represent the dog's attempt to cope with profound boredom and stress. The behaviors are not willfulness or spite. They are the psychological consequences of an environment that provides no outlet for a highly social, cognitively capable animal's needs. Overwhelming physical affection. Humans express affection primarily through physical closeness, including hugs and face-to-face contact, and this tendency transfers naturally to interactions with dogs. But many dogs experience hugging as restrictive and threatening rather than comforting. A hug prevents a dog from moving away, which removes their ability to regulate the interaction and can trigger a fight or flight response in sensitive individuals. Respecting a dog's physical autonomy and allowing them to initiate contact rather than imposing it is a meaningful way to support their mental health. Dogs that feel they have control over their physical interactions with humans develop stronger trust and greater confidence than those who are regularly subjected to unwanted contact they cannot escape. The difference between a dog that approaches willingly and a dog that tolerates being held reflects a real difference in the dog's sense of safety and agency within the relationship. The common thread across all 7 of these habits is that dogs have emotional and psychological needs that are as real as their physical ones, and that meeting those needs requires paying attention to what dogs are actually communicating, rather than projecting human frameworks onto their experience. Small, consistent adjustments in how these 7 areas are approached can produce a dog that is calmer, more confident, more trusting, and fundamentally more resilient over the long